You are listening to the Prosper Law Podcast. Learn how to reduce stress, have more time, and make more money. Come on in.
I'm Greg McCollum, and I built a 7-figure criminal defense law firm. I formed Prosper Law to show criminal defense law firm owners who are desperate for success how to grow from under $200,000 to $1 million and beyond. Hi, Greg McCollum here for another edition of the Prosper at Law podcast. Today's topic deals with leverage, and I think the guy's name is Dan Martell or something like that, who wrote a book, and the name of the book is Buy Back Your Time. And the concept is nothing new. All businesses do it, and it has to do with leverage, and also the fact that the time is, everyone has the same amount of time. There are 168 hours in a week. And that's the same for billionaires. It's the same for people, day laborers, or everybody. And the time is finite. And so what do you do with the time? Are you doing something of a higher nature or something of a lower nature? And so the idea of buying back your time is this concept of figuring out what is your time worth. And when this was first taught to me, I was very resistant to it. And I think I talked about this before on a podcast because I did flat fees in criminal law and I didn't charge hourly. My idea was, well, if I mow my own lawn, if I clean my house, if I run my own errands, if I'm the person that goes to the bank and does this, that I'm saving money. But I'm not really saving money. I'm costing myself an opportunity. Now, part of my problem with this is that at that time, I didn't know what to do with the time that I was buying back. I didn't have a plan. I didn't have a clear vision of where I wanted to go. I didn't know the steps and things that I could do myself other than, say, maybe go to a networking event, all right? I didn't really have a concept. So it's important or essential that you know what to do with the time that you're buying back. And I talked about this a little bit. You can't just waste the time. There's this concept that people who are successful, people that are extremely successful, people that are, say, rich and have big companies, then you don't expect them to mow the lawn. You don't expect them to clean their own swimming pool. You don't expect them to run errands. Sometimes when you see a famous person or celebrity or somebody like that, and they're at the grocery store, they're doing some mundane task, people look at it and go, wow, that's unusual. I can't believe they're doing that. And so you have this concept that once you make it, once you become successful, then you'll have all these things done for you. And we consider that luxury. And so the idea, which is wrong, is that once I make it, then I can pay for these services because I'll be successful, I'll have a lot of money, I'll be rich, and so I can pay the people to do these things. It's the reverse of that. When you pay the people at a lower rate than your rate to do the things, that frees up your time so that you can do something valuable to become successful. It's not a reward at the end of success, it's the path to success. And so to do this, to buy back your time, to do something productive, to follow whatever it may be, but to do the things that you need to do to succeed and become more successful, I recommend, and I didn't come up with this is well known with virtually every successful person. It's taught, Coaches teach it, webinars, people teach it. Obviously, somebody wrote a book about it. And so it's a real thing, and it's significant, and it's not something that you want to avoid, because to grow your law firm, use leverage and have other people do the things that need to be done that they can do. Now, maybe they can do them better than you, and in many ways, they probably almost always can. There was a guy I remember years ago that used to wash and detail my car. And I went in there one time. He hadn't seen me for a couple of weeks. And he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I washed the car myself, or I washed it and waxed it or whatever." And he said, "Don't do me like that, Greg. If you start washing cars, I may start practicing law." And the reality of it is, even though it seemed like an expense to me, they were better at it. They had a whole crew. They had all the equipment. They could wash the car and clean the car in a short period of time, and the car looked great. Whereas it would take me, by the time I got everything out, got the garden hose and the bucket and got the car wash stuff and the cloths and everything and started doing it, by the time I probably almost got set up, they would have been finished with it. And so they were good at it. It's what they did all day. They were set up for it. They had the equipment, they had the people. And so these people would just attack the car with their rags and everything, and then it just comes out looking brand new. So there's a huge value there. Now, at the time, honestly, I'm embarrassed to say, I didn't know what to do. I didn't understand anything about growing a business. I didn't understand the opportunity cost. So I thought, well, I'm smart. I'm saving money. If it costs $75 to get the car detailed or whatever it was, I just saved $75. But that's not really what happened. What happened was I made the bad use of my time. And sometimes people have issues with this, because if the lawn service shows up and mows the lawn, sometimes people feel lazy. They feel like, well, I'm wasting money. I'm lazy. And they have a mental block with it. They have a value issue with it, where they think they're a bad person because they're too good to go do, honest work and that sort of thing. Most of us were raised with that kind of philosophy. And it's not the spoiled rich are doing this because they're lazy. They've got something more valuable to do, whatever that may be. So if you look at yourself, and it's easy enough to do this, you figure out what's your gross income, how many work weeks are there in a year, and divide it by, say, 40 hours a week. Okay, it could be 50 hours or 60 hours, maybe you work that much. But honestly, if you work that much, you probably, in real production time, I just use 40. You could use any number, but 40 hours a week. And how many weeks? Well, is it 52 weeks? Is it 50 weeks? Is it 48 weeks? Is it 46 weeks? It's not 52 weeks, because there are holidays and there are things that come up. And then at some point, you're not going to work, whether you're drawn out of the office through obligations or because somebody got sick or you had to do something. It comes down to 46, 48 weeks. And I'd usually take the 46, because I think that's more realistic. So what's your number? If your law firm grosses $2 million, it's a higher number. If it grosses, say, $200,000, and I think that's probably a good basis point to figure this. If you're only making $50,000 or $60,000, then the hourly rate may be so low that you struggle with this a little bit. But let's say that your law firm brings in $200,000 a year, and that's the number you're going to divide, and you divide it by the 46 weeks and 40 hours a week. So your hourly rate is $108 an hour. Okay. So that's what you're worth at $200,000 gross. You're worth $108 an hour. So then you start looking around at things that have to get done in your life and in your work and in your office. There are things that have to get done. And so you want to ask who can do it, what needs to be done, but don't ask what, but ask who. Who do I know? Who's available that can do this work? And if you start looking at things that are really kind of expensive line items, and they seem like they're too expensive, they're really not when you look at your hourly rate. So at $108 an hour, if you're answering your own phone, if you're in your law firm and you don't have a staff, and when the phone rings, you answer the phone, you're going to end up talking to people that you don't need to talk to. You're going to talk to people who you don't want to talk to. And except for the idea of a caller ID, half the time you pick up the phone, you don't know who's on the other line. You don't know if it's going to be a good call or bad call. You don't know if you're going to be able to get off the phone with them. You don't know what that's going to look like. And you could end up being on the phone with them for a long period of time. We've all experienced that. So what's the receptionist cost? It depends on what part of the country you're in, whether you're in a big city or whatever. So I set the receptionist costs at $15 to $25 an hour. So if you're paying somebody $15 to $25 an hour to answer the phone and you're not doing it, then your hourly rate, it works. You should be paying somebody the lesser rate than paying yourself the higher rate to do that, because it's keeping you from doing something of a higher value. The paralegal, if you're doing your own paralegal work, same thing. What's the paralegal cost? I've got the paralegal at $30 to $50 an hour. I know some are probably less than that, but I went ahead and just said it. Because if you say, I can't afford a paralegal, well, you can't afford not to have a paralegal, because there are things that you can do to grow your business. And a big one, I know a lot of lawyers who write their own checks and keep their own books. So they're doing bookkeeping. Now, bookkeeping can be kind of an expensive item, $25 to $75 an hour. So even if it's $75 an hour to do bookkeeping, and this example is a little bit different than a receptionist, because if you think about the receptionist, you go, yeah, but no receptionist, I'm not going to pay them for 1 hour, Greg. I have to give them a job. And so they're going to be doing a job. And if I don't have the money to pay them, then that's not going to work. And you have a point there at some point. I think it's going to work and it will work. But if you say, well, let me just look at a bookkeeper. Well, the bookkeeping services can be done, on a limited time. Maybe it takes a bookkeeper, 2 hours a week to keep your books. So they're not a full-time employee. They're a bookkeeper. And so you're paying a bookkeeper $25 to $75 an hour. Say that takes them 2 hours a week or 4 hours a month or something like that. It's not a big ticket item. Now, we have somebody in terms of the pricing and stuff like that. Like I have somebody, because like my QuickBooks was a disaster, all right? And things weren't coded right and things didn't work right. And I struggled to grow my business because I didn't know what percentages I was spending on what, because the books were not right. And it took me, I've talked about this, it took me a long time to finally get that straight. So now as a consultant, in addition to my bookkeeper, my office manager, firm administrator, who's also does the books, writes the checks, handles all that, makes sure the money's transferred, we have a certified QuickBooks professional. She's not a CPA. She's a QuickBooks certified professional. Well, guess what? She knows everything about QuickBooks, and she can fix everything, and everything is in the right category. And when things are not right, she comes in and cleans it up. And we'd hired her to clean up a big mess that we had partially cleaned up, and then she cleaned it up. So now it's right. So I pay her $80 an hour. So if she works on something for 4 or 5 hours over the course of the weeks or the months or whatever, then I've laid out $400 or $500, and now I can sleep at night because I know what my numbers are. And so the value I get from that is tremendous. Now, you all have these other things that everybody has. Maybe if you live in a condo or an apartment or something like that, you don't have to worry about lawn service. But if you have a family, you have a house, lawn service is usually $30 to $60 per visit. Somebody to clean your office. If you're cleaning your own office to save money or because you can't afford it, you're not helping yourself. You're not doing something smart. You're doing something of a lower nature when you could be doing something of a higher nature. And I'll talk about what you could be doing in a minute. Because if you're like me and you think, well, I don't know what to do, I might as well be out there, mowing the lawn because I don't have anything better to do. I don't have any ideas. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. So part of this is you need to learn, and you can learn what to do that will make you better and make you more profitable. So an office cleaner is $40 to $50 an hour. They do it in probably 2 hours. Okay, maid service, your house. Now, if you have a little house, it's not as expensive. You have a huge house, you got a 5,000 square foot house or something like that, you're going to pay more for it, but you're going to save so much time and energy. Same thing for running errands. I used to go to the bank and make all the deposits. So it takes me, 30 minutes, 35, 40 minutes to go just do that, put the money in the bank. I was desperate to get the money in the bank. Sometimes I might go to the bank 2 or 3 times because every time I got some money, I always needed money in the bank. So I just run out and make the deposit. That's inefficient. Okay. Answering service. If you don't have a receptionist and you have an answering service is $250 to $400 a month. All right. If you're paying, I'll just have a number here. If you're paying $300 a month to the answering service, it may seem ridiculous, but even if you only get 50 calls a month, and I think you get more than that, but let's say you don't, that's only, I think it comes out to $6 per call. So you're paying somebody $6 to do something that's going to keep you from spending your time and doing things that don't move you forward. So then what do you get out of this? What are the benefits? One is that you're not distracted. You could actually focus on doing something, and whether that's focusing on the file or the case and actually doing a better job so that when you get to court, you're not feeling like you're not prepared or you're completely stressed out and it's creating anxiety. You're going to be less exhausted. You're going to have time, and you're going to have time for production, and you're going to just have a well-being. You're going to feel better. You're going to be more rested. You're going to be more focused. And that's if you're not even doing anything to really grow your law firm because you don't know what to do yet. So then there's a dollar cost benefit, and it costs less to pay for help. And so you say, well, all right, now I'm going to pay for this. What am I going to do? Rest, get some rest, feel better, get some exercise, read, call clients back, learn about marketing, read a book with an idea of something that you can implement. If you have nothing else to do, you can do what people call gas calls, okay? And that is, we all know that the number one client complaint, the clients complain about lack of communication with the lawyer, that I don't hear enough. I don't know what's going on with my case. I'm nervous. I'm anxious. I'm worried. And those things snowball into a problem. Sometimes the client gets so anxious, and we've all experienced this, where the client gets so anxious that they're ready to take the file back. And if it's a criminal case, now they want a refund back. So if they paid you, $7,500 for the file and they're frustrated because, quote, you haven't done anything, and then they want the file back, and then they want a refund. And so you're dealing with that. Now, what are you going to do? And then the time of if you have a fee dispute and you go through that process, or you refuse to give them any money back because your fees are non-refundable, then that's a huge time suck. And if you've ever been through that, and if you've practiced criminal defense law for any period of time, I would say you had definitely been through that. You've gone through that. So if it prevents that, you're better off. So what's a gas call? A gas call is called give a shit, okay? And it's just an acronym, a gas call. So instead of cleaning your office or mowing your lawn, you pick up the phone, you call a client, and they'll be pleasantly surprised. They'll probably be stunned that you called them. And you're like, hey, Bill, just thinking about you. I want to make sure everything's going okay. Do you have any questions about your case? You know, how's your family? How are they dealing with this? And then the next thing you know, they're happy because you care about them. You took time. They know you're busy. You took the time to call them. And then the next thing you know, they're writing a positive review, or they know somebody else that needs help, and they go, listen, you really should call Greg. I mean, the guy just calls me to check on me. I never had an experience like this. So if you can't think of anything to do, you can make some gas calls. Now, as I said, I had a huge block on this. I had a huge mindset issue on this because I thought, well, that's stupid. I'm spending money, not making money. It's not like I can sit down at my desk and work on a file for an hour and bill $250 an hour. That would make sense because then I pay this person $50 and I sat down and billed time and made $250. That math is easy. What's hard to understand is that you start unlocking your potential. If you just learn something or read a book or do something, there's going to be value there. You can't see it because it takes a little time for the value to materialize. But all successful people do this. And if you're sitting there saying, well, if I made more money, I would do that, then you have to ask yourself, you know, you're a lawyer, you have a law license, you know stuff, you know things. You're not unintelligent. You're not without a thought in your head. And if you really, you're almost taking the position that I have so little confidence in myself, and this is where I was. I have so little confidence in myself that I don't believe that if I take the time to think, if I take the time to read and learn, even if I just look at other things people are doing that seem to be working and copy that, your mindset is such that I am such a loser and I'm so incompetent that I can't come up with one thing that will work. And that's kind of the mindset that I had. But you are resourceful, you are smart, you have ability, and there are things that you can do to start bringing in more cases and bringing in more money. You could meet with somebody who's trying to sell you some marketing. You could take the time to meet with them, whereas you can't do that, you know, if you're off doing these errands and doing these things. So there are things that you can do. There are resources that you can go to. Now, in terms of doing the things yourself, I remember, you know, a good friend of mine who's a very successful personal injury lawyer in Charleston, and his wife is, I think she's got a master's degree in math. And so she does the books and she does this stuff. And I remember one day, I was talking to him and he was saying, oh, my wife is upset. She's frustrated. And I think I ended up talking to her. And it's because she was having a computer glitch. And we've all had that. We've all experienced that. And so she was trying to work through basically an IT issue. And even back then, I knew enough to say, that's ridiculous. Why don't you just pick up the phone and call an IT person? They're going to come in there and fix the thing in an hour, and it's going to save you, 3 or 4 hours of frustration where you may not even get it fixed because you have no expertise. You don't know what you're doing. You're smart, you're capable, but you're trying to do something that you just cannot do. I know that in my law firm, and I remember kind of late to even switch to accounting software. We were so backward and functioning at such a low level. A lot of the stuff we just did on paper. We reconciled it on paper and the checks and the old school thing. So I remember when we put in the QuickBooks, and then there was a time when at this time we were shifting to online because online QuickBooks was new. It seemed to be a good thing because now I could open this computer right now and pull up all my numbers from anywhere. So the QuickBooks Online, we were trying to go to that. And at the time, I was married, and my wife, who had worked in my law firm for years, she was, literally throwing things, okay, because she was mired up in QuickBooks and she didn't know how to do it. And she was trying to work through it. It was frustrating. It ruined her day. I think she went home mad. It still wasn't fixed. So that's not the thing that you want to do. That's trading something for a lower value. And so she's trying to do it herself. And the reason she's doing it herself is because we're trying to save money. Well, that's not what you want to do. And I remember myself, I'd started a newsletter. I had an e-newsletter back when those were kind of new and cool. And so this marketing company did the newsletter for me. And I didn't pay that much to the marketing company. They're still out there. They're really pretty good. And so they did the newsletter. Well, I started looking at the cost of that, and I thought, well, I'll do that in-house. And I had somebody who was a good writer. She had a couple of degrees in writing and literature and those kind of things. And so she liked writing. She was really good at it. So I kind of turned that over to her and guided her, and she did a great job with the newsletter. So I brought that in-house. And I'm not saying that's a mistake or anything like that, because it did work for me and I had a little bit more control over it, and we could put out a little bit better newsletter. But then she resigned. She was moving, I think she moved to Boston. And so I said, well, keep doing the newsletter. Well, she did it for a while, but then she got too busy and I was paying her just to do the newsletter. So then now it's back on my lap. I want the newsletter to keep going. So I started doing it myself, and I would try to write these interesting articles, and I would spend probably 2 or 3 hours on this newsletter every week. And what happened is it just fell off. And we don't put out that newsletter now because I did it myself. So what did that cost me? The click rate on a newsletter like that is not very high. Not many people even open it. But when people see it in their inbox, it probably cost me some cases because I wasn't top of the mind for somebody. So doing these things that you don't know how to do, or doing things that anybody else could do. And there are two categories. There's the one thing which takes some expertise, and there's the other thing which is just a routine. Anybody could do it. Really think about this. Look at how you're spending your time. If you're not learning and growing, and you're going home frustrated and exhausted, and at the end of the week, you're just blown out and done and dreading the next week because you're doing things of a lower value and you're squandering your hourly rate, look at that, take some action, and do what successful people do. If you want to be successful, look at what successful people do. And what successful people do is they know their hourly rate and they don't do things below their hourly rate. Thank you for listening. I hope you got some value out of this podcast, and I'll see you next time. If you want to know more, go to prosperitlaw.com. We show criminal defense law firm owners how to reduce stress, have more free time, and make more money. Thanks for listening.